Lion Corporation will be investing $100 million in a new research facility. The facility is expected to generate cash flows of $30 million per year for the next 8 years. The company's weighted average cost of capital is 7.5%. So that would be our discount rate for any net present value calculation. The line has 5 million shares outstanding, each of which has a current market price of 26.50. The company's earnings yield is 8%. The impact of the investment on Lion's stock price is most likely. All right, so there's going to be 2 steps to this. The first one we're going to do is calculate NPV using our calculator, which is why I have this pulled up. So our cash flows function will go in here. We'll have cash outflow of minus 100 million. Then we're going to have inflows of 30 for 8 years. So what's the net present value of this project? Make sure we don't have any other cash flows in there. We're good. Go to net present value. We'll discount at 7.5, which gives us an NPV of 75.7191. So to get our share price impact here, we are now going to take that NPV and we're going to divide that by shares outstanding for share price impact, since this should go to earnings. So 75.7191, we'll divide that by 5 since we have 5 million. And again, these are in millions. Gives us an impact of 15.14. Answer B. A company plans to invest $7 million in a project. The project is expected to produce incremental net cash flows of USD 525,000 per year in perpetuity. If the company's opportunity cost of capital is 8.5%, then the net present value of the project is closest to. So for a perpetuity or a project that spits off cash in perpetuity, to value that, we take the cash flow and we divide by cost of capital, so 8.5%. That gives us a little over 6 million, so 6,176,500. From there, to calculate NPV, we just subtract out the initial investment of 7 million. So that tells us we have a negative NPV of 823,500. That's going to be closest to answer B. We're probably off a little because I rounded a little earlier than I should have maybe, but given that this answer is close and not close to any of these others, we'll stick with answer B. A firm's liquidity position has improved over the years after the joining of Mr. Isu, new chief financial officer. Which of the following factors least likely contribute to the firm's improved liquidity position? So improved liquidity, meaning essentially, I think an easy way to think about this is easier access or more access to more cash. And so that could be in the form of credit lines, or that could be in the form of actual debt or actual cash or other current assets that can be brought into liquidity quickly. So 2 of these will contribute to improved liquidity and 1 will not, which is what we want to choose as our answer. So A, increased credit limits. This will improve our liquidity since we'll have larger amounts of cash available that we can tap from our credit line. B, increasing days in receivables. Increasing receivables means that we're receiving cash from our customers slower. And if we're receiving cash slower, this is going to make our liquidity position less attractive. So this would likely not improve the liquidity position. So I'm leaning towards B as our answer now. And C, increasing days of accounts payable. This is going to have the opposite effect of receivables. If we're taking longer to pay our suppliers, that means that we're able to hold more cash on our balance sheet, which makes our liquidity position better. So we can rule that out and confidently go with answer B. Which of the following is most likely the reason companies might hesitate to exercise a timing option in capital investments, even if delaying the project could provide better information? So the timing option typically is what was described here. So it's an option or opportunity to delay a project and wait for better information, know whether it's going to be more profitable or have higher profits, etc. So why might you not delay that and just go ahead with the project right now? A, fear of increased initial cost due to inflation. This could certainly be a fear or a reason to go forward with the project now. If you think that some commodity or input for your project is going to require a much higher cost or have a bunch of inflation in 6 months or a year, maybe you just go ahead and do it now. Even if it's a little more uncertain, the cost is going to be lower, which might make your investment more attractive. B, concern about missing out on current market opportunities. This could also be a reason. However, I think it's normally less of a concern because even if this is not talking about delaying something for years and years. If you exercise this option and you delay, you can always get back in on things relatively quickly. So I would say that this A is probably the better answer so far. B could still be a good answer, but A seems like the better answer. And C, expectation of reduced flexibility in future decision making. This is going to be incorrect. This would be the reason to exercise the option so that you have more flexibility. So we're going to go with A. This is why you'd want to move forward now. Which of the following coupon payment structures will allow investors to benefit from an increase in interest rates? Is it going to be inverse floating rate notes? It will not be inverse floating rate notes. A inverse floating rate note the coupon is going to fluctuate inverse to the increase in interest rates. So if rates go up, our coupon here is going to go down. If coupons go down, interest rate's going to go up. So they would benefit from a decrease in interest rates because the coupon would go up. Is it B, plain vanilla bonds? Plain vanilla bonds will also not increase or benefit because their rate is going to be fixed. So when the interest rate goes up, their coupon is going to stay the same. And since the coupon is going to stay the same, that's going to lead to price losses. So the value of the bond is going to go down. So that leaves us with C, which will be our answer. Floating rate notes, they are going to float with the rate, with interest rates. So if rates go up, their coupons are also going to go up since the coupons are going to be priced as some spread above a reference rate. So it might be a spread of 2% over SOFR. So if SOFR goes up, that spread is going to stay the same above that amount. Answer C. A corporate bond has the following characteristics. We have price, coupon, duration, and convexity. If the credit spreads narrow by 175 basis points, then the price of the bond will be closest to. So let's pull in our formula we'll be using to calculate this. It's a relatively long one. So our change in price is going to be approximately equal to modified duration, which we're given at 7.5. And we're multiplying that by our change in yield, which is narrowing or decreasing by 175 basis points. So we can see that decrease here as a minus 0.0175. And remember, our modified duration is always put in as negative in our formulas because bond prices move inverse to rate changes. So if bond prices fall, or if bond yields fall, the price goes up. And then the second part of this is 1/2 times convexity, which we're given at 101, times the change in yield, which again is at 175 basis points. So you can see that whole portion right down here. So then the key here is we're adding, I think this is this portion here, yeah, and then this ends up being here. So it gets you 0.1468, 14.68%. So then from here, you just have to multiply that by the price because the change in price is not what we were looking for. We were looking for the actual price. So you'll do the actual price multiplied by 1.1468 gets you 122.13. Answer B. Which of the following issues has the highest seniority ranking in the event of default? Is it subordinated, senior unsecured, or senior subordinated? So our overall stack is going to go senior secured, then it's going to go unsecured, then it's going to go subordinated. And then you have senior or junior within each of those. So for this order, we're going to have 1, 2, and then 3. So this will be answer B, senior unsecured. A 8% semi-annual coupon bond has an 8-year maturity and is priced to yield 9.5%. The modified duration of the issue is 5.3515. The full price of the issue is 106.35. Ignoring the effects of convexity, the revised full price of the issue, if yields increase by 125 basis points, is closest to. So we're not going to be using convexity in this. We'll just be considering our duration to calculate the change in price here. So our change in price using only duration is going to be negative modified duration times the change in yield. So we're given modified duration at 5.3515, and then we're going to multiply this by a positive 125 basis point change. So we can see that right here, which is going to be equal to minus 0.0669. That's going to be our decrease in price. So then what we need to do is we're looking for an actual price amount, what the new price is. So we multiply that by the current price, 106.35, gives us a decrease of 7.1148. We subtract that 7.1148 from that current price of 106.35, and that's going to bring us to 99.2352. This is going to be awfully close to answer B. There's probably just some differences in rounding throughout there, and we'll go with B. A U.S. Treasury bill with a par value of USD 1 million and 200 days until maturity is selling for USD 990,000. Its bank discount rate is closest to. So this will be our formula we're looking at here. Our discount rate in our formula is what we're going to be solving for. So we'll be able to plug in all these other numbers. So we have present value of 990, future value of, or face value of that par. So that'll be 1 million. And then we're going to do 1 minus days divided by the year. So it's going to be 200, and we're using 360 for our year in this case. And then we're multiplying that by X. So we work through that algebra, and going through each of those steps is going to get us to a discount rate of 1.8%. Answer B. James Cunningham is evaluating the factors that influence issue ratings. He has identified and described 2 factors, which he has summarized below. Factor 1, the higher the senior unsecured ranking, the lower the notching adjustment will be. This is a correct statement. Essentially what this is saying is the higher senior unsecured ranks, so if, let's say this is our senior unsecured debt, if there are 5 other issues of senior secured debt above here, this makes us lower in the capital stack. So what this is going to require is a higher notching adjustment, because this higher notching adjustment essentially means we need to account for all this other debt and assume there's a lower likelihood of getting paid back if something goes wrong with the company. But if the senior unsecured debt is way up here and maybe there's only one level of secured above or nothing, then we don't need to notch that as much because we're toward the higher end of the capital stack than we are in this scenario. So factor 1 is a good statement so far. Factor 2, in the case of structural subordination, the debt of the parent holding company is serviced before that of operating subsidiaries. So this is not going to be accurate. This is the opposite. The operating subsidiaries are going to come first before the parent holding company. So Cunningham is most likely correct with respect to factor 1 only, factor 2 only, or both. And based on what we said earlier, factor 1 is good, factor 2 is not. Answer A.